Good evening. I'm so excited to be part of this evening, the BookTrib Facebook Live series. Welcome everybody who's watching. We're thrilled to have two amazing guests today. The book we're talking about is a delightful romance called Moments Like This. And we have Chris Polaha, who you may know from Wonder Woman 1984, from Jurassic World, and from the Hallmark Mysteries. Is that right? The Hallmark Mysteries. So we have an actual movie star with us this evening. And we also have the very famous and wonderful Anna Gomez. And Anna has her own amazing bio. She is a woman who does it all. And I have to say that she is an author that not only has broken through the glass ceilings of different kinds of companies, advertising for one, but she has also written many books. And we're going to talk tonight about how Chris and Anna met to create this lovely book, and that will be a series called Moments Like This. And we're going to get right into it. For those who don't know me, I'm Meryl Moss. I'm moderating here, but only just to get these two talking about such a wonderful story. And a little bit of romance is what we all could use right now after such a long stretch of, we all know what it is, being home and some being, just being sequestered. So I have to ask this question. I have to ask, and either one of you can begin. How did the two of you begin to write this book that will soon become a series? And we're talking about moments like this. Anna, want to start?
How did we meet or how did we start to write?
How
Well,
did we meet? How did this all start? How did this get started?
it all started with me approaching a friend of mine who was a neighbor of Chris's. And one day, the neighbor of Chris was going for a walk and saw Chris and asked if he wanted to speak to somebody he knew about producing some books into film and looking at some scripts. And Chris said he was interested. We scheduled a Zoom call. This is a very abridged version because
By now, though, I think it's fair to. I think that yeah. I think it's okay to be abridged.
yeah, so it's a shortcut. But one Zoom call later, we decided to collaborate and write a series of 5 books set in Hawaii.
So this just sounds too abridged, I have to say.
Yeah.
First of all, one person lives outside in Indiana, one person lives in Los Angeles. This is not as simple as that. This is just, is this kismet? Is this just, this is magic that the two of you come together to write this brilliant, lovely book, and soon to be a series.
I think Chris is more poetic than me, so go ahead.
No, first off, Meryl, thank you so much for hosting tonight. It's so gracious of you to have us here on BookTrib and to talk about moments like this in this particular moment. And I think what's interesting about our story is that neither one of us had any agenda. We had no idea that the collaboration that we were about to get into was about to get into it. I was interested in taking a Zoom call because I wanted to talk to Anna about her scripts and her past books that were written under the name Christine Brae.
Right.
I had taken a weekend deep dive and read one of her books, which I thought was really lovely. And it's funny, the one little side note I'll give you is my wife said, romance novel. It's like, is it going to be like lit porn? Like, you can't put your name on that. And I said, well, and as I was reading her book, I hadn't gotten to anything super steamy. So I was terrified that I was going to turn the page and all of a sudden be like, I can't do this. I can't do this. So when we got back on the phone on Monday, we talked about the nature of what the stories were going to be. And but the funny thing is, on the very first Zoom call, which was a Friday, Anna invited me to join her. She said, why don't you collaborate with me? Why don't we write this series together? And I said, are you kidding? That's 5 books. And she's like, I'm not kidding. And I said, yes. And then I said, but why don't you think about it? Why don't you go and talk to your husband, talk to your agent? Because that's a pretty huge deal. you're splitting your nut with me here. I said, that's a big deal. And she said, yeah, I'll think about it. So I thought about it and she thought about it. And we came back on Monday and I said, we're not going to write like naughty books. And she's like, no, they're beautiful. They're for the Hallmark audience. It's going to take place in Hawaii. And I said, and you're sure you're good with splitting? And she's like, let's go for it. And I said, I'm in. So we signed contracts and we did all of like the nitty gritty dirty work on Wednesday. That was literally a week after we'd met. And then we just started talking and writing and collaborating. And I had the gift of the fact that Anna had already begun. And so she'd already had the name of the book, the characters sort of created. So I had the easy job. I had the light lifting in this book.
You know what I never told you? I never told you that when we talked on Friday, you said you had to talk to your manager, and I was so sure your manager would say no.
Oh yeah.
She would be like, I was thinking like she would be like, you're gonna write a book?
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
so I thought
partnerships are not easy.
Yeah, I
Writing
thought you'd
partnerships are really difficult. And I've worked with many authors who started out with partnerships and then ended up splitting and never being, friends again, because it's just very difficult. But the way this came together, it sounds like it was a match made in heaven, because I'm a big believer that when things are going to work, they just work easily. I think we've all been through many things like that.
Well, I can speak from my point of view that working with Anna, the expectations have never been like, again, there was never an agenda. I've never wanted anything other than a collaborative process with the aim that we might be able to come up with something that we might be able to sell and turn into a movie one day. All of it was hypothetical. So the fact that when I got this book and I felt it for the first time, and I was like, it like the cover is like that really beautiful, like kind of waxy paper. And it's like, it looks gorgeous. And we took our time to design this with Hang Lee, right? It's Hang. I always want to say her name. Hang Lee, who is this really talented cover artist. And Anna and Hang and I jumped onto a Zoom call. I was in London. Anna was in Chicago area, Indiana. And is Hang in Chicago as well?
Yes, she is.
Is.
Why don't you show that cover for a minute again to all those that are watching? It's so beautiful. It's so beachy. It's mood. It's all about the mood.
Yeah. And we talked about it. We were like, we want a book that when it's on your coffee table, it's going to transport you just looking at it. And if it's on your bedside stand, we want you to feel and like just transportive. And then we did this thing where we came up with an idea to come. And so it went all 5 are in a row. It's all going to start to make something. And so we took our time with it and we designed and the story, what really, Anna, we're doing is editing as we go with each other. That's kind of what I discovered last night as I was thinking about, we're writing book 2 currently, and we write. And as we write, we'll go back and we like put the pieces together as we move forward. So the story is getting edited and all the speed bumps are getting knocked down and smoothed out as we go. Because when we turned book 1 in, that was one of the comments was you couldn't tell who wrote what. Our voices were really seamless. And then the editor was like, I don't have major edits. I just have like some technical stuff here we can fix.
Wow. Wow.
So it was just so seamless that I keep telling Chris, I think we're taking that for granted because as you said, Meryl, like, and I know co-authors, like authors have been like texting me going, how do you do that? It's not that easy to collaborate, So it was just so seamless for us, which was great. And I think it's because we're similar in a lot of ways.
In what ways?
We have the same voice. We never really disagreed on an idea or a path or a vision in the story. What we would do is build on each other. So if he would suggest something, I would say, yeah, and we can do this. It's always, yeah, and it was never like, no, let's not put that in there. And I think, it's weird for me to say, it might be weird for me to say this, but we're also similar in personality and I think in values. So we value each other's time. We don't take each other's time for granted. We're both very busy. We take it seriously. We're professional about it.
Yeah.
So are you doing this on Zoom together, or you sort of does somebody start it and write like
It's
a
only
beginning?
ever on Zoom, Meryl. We've never met in person.
You've never met in
Every
person.
Wednesday on Zoom.
Okay.
And
Do you
I
have
was thinking this last week, Chris, you weren't in this interview the other time, but remember, it's always Zoom or FaceTime. So
Yeah.
there's always an interaction face to face. And the first time you called me and it was a phone call, you were like, this is the first time I'm just talking to your voice.
Yeah, I do remember that. I do. I remember.
Your voice is really high.
Weird. It's
Because
much-
we're always used to collaborating, and I think if we were to give tips to people who are co-writing, I think that's one thing, you have to be engaged.
You have to. Well, you were so smart about every Friday. Or it started out on Wednesdays. We had a standing appointment on Wednesday, and then we got to a point where we're like, let's switch it to Friday, and we'll just go the week and the weekend, and we'll have a thing. And we're religious about it. We're religious.
what time of day is it, since you're in different time zones? Is it midday where you both sort of,
Yeah,
kind of have your day going? How does that work?
it tends to
When
be
he
about-
was in the UK, it was always after dinner for him and late, like just like right before he'd go to bed. So it would be 10 p.m. there and like 3 p.m. here. And I don't think I ever mentioned this in public, but I would block 3 p.m. on a Friday or a Wednesday in my calendar. And my secretary would be like, what is this block? I'd make excuses like the pool contractor is coming, or I'm getting my fridge fixed, or I gotta go to the dentist. Like afterwards, she's like, but it's this chunk of
Yeah.
time.
It's the same every time. Like, it's just a good hour for me to do all these things.
Best to her yesterday, by the way. I told her those were my
How much time did you block off? Was it a couple of hours? Was it an hour? 3
it would
hours?
always be an hour, but we would go up to 2 hours max.
Yeah.
It would be an hour to 2 hours. But and I think it wasn't pure book. It was how's the family? What are you doing? It was more, and then ideas would come out of our conversations.
Yeah.
So this has created a
Always
friendship,
start
which
the conversation off on a personal note. It's always we catch up, but we spend a good 10, 15 minutes just like checking in with each other and and then we can talk book.
that sounds like a real friendship. That doesn't sound like a business deal. That sounds like a real friendship.
It started out, I think, as a partnership, and it turned into a friendship. But I think, because Chris has worked on things like this before, collaborating, not necessarily writing, but table reads or whatever, producing and shooting and whatnot. He said early on, he said, when ideas come, we shouldn't curb them or curtail them. So if there's an idea, feel free to text me, and I'll be like, well, I feel bad about texting all the time or whatever. And we were like, no, let's agree. If there's an idea, if there's a question, just text. We may not see it till the next day, depending on the time difference, but at least you're getting it out there. And I think it's worked for us, because when we're doing the book, especially in the later stage, like we are now, let's say with the book 2, they're itty bitty details.
Yeah.
That we're now trying to work. Does he wear a hat? Does he go here? Does he have a brother? And he'll be like, no, I thought she had 2 cousins. No, it's not one. It's one cousin. So there's this interactive, I don't know what way of working.
It's a very fluid.
It's very fluid.
Because what we're doing is we're taking turns, and so we're kind of codependent on each other in the sense that I'm waiting for Anna to put her chapter in so I could use it almost as a writing prompt, and I know where to spring. And Anna's always giving me permission to say, she goes, go and write, like write, do your thing. But there's something for me anyway that works better when we just stay in tandem. And so when we become equally yoked and we're both at the same, and we're both pulling the weight together, then there's a flow that happens. And in order to maintain that flow, you just have to open up dialogue. You have to be in touch.
So when it comes to acting, okay, just in terms of the acting piece, where you are, you're never alone. You're working with others, and that's in a way, it's like acting in tandem. Like, do you find that there's a comparison that you could make from doing the acting work to doing the writing work with Anna? Does that?
Yeah, I mean, acting, filmmaking is all collaborative. So my entire artistic experience in storytelling has always been a shared experience. And I know that writing is very solitary. So if you are primarily a writer, it might be confusing at first to share, and that's something that Anna and I both, I think we made an agreement very early on about, like, we don't have to take credit. It's like, I don't know. I honestly did the audiobook. I have no idea who wrote what. Like, I know when there's things that Anna wrote, and I know there's certain things I wrote, but then there's things in there where I'm like, did Anna write it? Did I write? And it doesn't matter. And I think as long as both of us can keep that attitude, no matter how big this thing grows or how whatever happens, if we can maintain that sort of like giving it away attitude, then I can't see why this can't have a really long, wonderful life. And I think in collaborations, I've noticed on sets, it's when people start to get territorial, when it starts, well, I did that, or he did that, or and it becomes this weird. And so far, I mean, and again, I think because we had our expectations, I don't know what what were our expectations, Anna? We just wanted to write a book together. We just want to tell stories. And the beautiful thing is the whole thing was born. And so now we just know we have a story to tell. And so now I think our objective is just to tell a really good story.
Well, let's talk about the story.
Yesterday, we submitted our synopsis for the second book. And that was such a great achievement for us because we're cranking, you know.
Yeah, you're cranking. So let's just step back a little bit and talk a little bit about the story. So for those who are watching, Moments Like This takes place in Kona, Hawaii, which is Oahu. Oahu. Okay, sorry.
Kona with Love is the series name.
Oh, Kona with Love. Okay, so Oahu. So Hawaii is a dream come true. For those who have been there, they know that. For those who haven't been there, they can read this book and really feel it. Why Hawaii? Either one of you, just jump in.
We came into the story knowing that we wanted it to be cinematic. We wanted to make it into film. Hawaii is a beautiful place. It was, you know, I had that idea or that setting before I met Chris. But when I met Chris, it was unbelievably coincidental that he had lived in Hawaii for a year and added just the vivid color that we needed for that book to just come alive.
What island did you live on?
On Oahu. I filmed there, called North Shore back in 2004. My wife had our first baby over there. Caleb was born on Oahu. And so there's a house that Warren describes as his childhood home. And it literally is the house that we lived in on the street that we lived on. I mean, so it was easy to just rip right out of the headlines of my own life, you know, really specific places I filmed, places that I enjoyed going personally. Like there's a scene where Andie runs rocks. And if you don't know what that is, I won't spoil it for you, but I went with Brian, who's in the book, and ran actual rocks on the same beach that Andie does. And my dogs are wanting to take.
They're hungry.
Sorry, hold on.
Anna,
so, and you've spent some time in Hawaii as well?
Yeah, we used to visit when I was a child. Plus, I love the fact that Hawaii was filled with the Filipino culture because of the Filipinos who moved there for plantations and whatnot. It was just such a perfect way to put some cultural, you know, not just setting wise, bringing them to Hawaii, but actually bringing the culture, you know, to the forefront.
So tell us about the protagonist, Anna.
Her name is Andrea Matthews, and she is a workaholic. She was, and you know, the story starts out where she's basically, you know, worked herself sick and ended up in the hospital from exhaustion. You know, and then she has to revisit her life and her priorities. You know, she gave up a relationship for her job. And then things didn't work out. So when everything just got turned on its, you know, on its heels, I mean, she had to revisit, you know, what was important to her and do it alone. And actually, it's a very interesting story because we're getting so many messages from women who identify with her, but also women that have gone through what she's gone through, because Chris and I really painstakingly made sure that we saw the development of Andie from the time that she was, she ended up in the hospital to all the way to not just meeting Warren, but like being herself as a person and finding out really what makes, what's important to her. So that's her. That's who she is, and I think she speaks to many women.
Especially
People.
with the pandemic, has given so many people a chance to reevaluate where they are, what they've done, how they've lived, and seeing somebody, your protagonist, kind of work so hard and so hard to be in the hospital, right? We've all been running so hard, those of us who work these kinds of jobs. So I think that's part of what's resonating with people as well. It's sort of like, oh, it gives people a chance to think about their own lives, which is always the test of a great novel.
What's
What
also
about Warren?
sweet piece of escapism. I mean, you've got, and I love the fact that Anna's being so modest right now, because it kind of takes a genius to write a genius. And in one moment, Andie sort of does this business plan, and she's so thorough, and her mind works so clearly on how she wants to break down the business plan. And I was like, oh, that's Anna. Like, that's her business sense and her math mind coming in as a writer. And like, because Andie's also extremely whip smart and great at business. And I think that obviously comes from Anna and being able to write that. You have to know it to write it. To answer your question about Warren, we just created a character that was also at a bit of a turning point in his life. And I think that's where we've met. I read a review that said that male writers in the romance or women's lit genre are rare. And so when they saw my name attached on the book, they were excited to see, what I would bring to the table. And I think one of the things is an interesting perspective from manhood and what it looks like to be a young man and maybe immature and irresponsible with relationships and treating the heart and matters of the heart casually, when then all of a sudden you want to decide to become a real man and treat a woman with respect and dignity and know what that means to be in a loving relationship that's not just based on lust or not just based in superficial things. And so that's where we meet Warren at. And Andie is that catalyst, and she is that propulsion. So all of a sudden he meets this woman who he is completely enamored of and absolutely attracted to. But for the first time, he wants to respect her, and he's not treating her like an object. He's treating her like a person that's his equal. And I think that's a cool story to tell. And the way that they do that is that they live in the moment, and they share these moments together, and they make a deal. And he says, you know what, I don't want to know about your past, and you don't have to hear about mine. And we're just going to go and we're going to have these cool moments, and we're just going to exist right here, right now with each other. And I think that's also transportive. So we've taken people who are very desirable, like what Andie does for a living and what Warren does for a living is sort of, you call that wish fulfillment. We put it in a place that's very wish fulfillment, and then we've given them experiences that are very transportive and wish fulfillment. And then the thing that Anna and I really worked on was to also have some substance, so that as we go through the story, we're dropping these life lessons that are actually really deep matters of the heart that I think people are really relating to. And I've noticed something. There's a lot of women. Anna's very, very good at writing women's lit and lit general, but I mean, I preface it with women's lit because there's been so many women that are responding to passages that she's written that I didn't like. I wasn't seeing it, and all of a sudden now seeing how people are responding to it, I'm realizing, I'm like, oh, that's a whole gifting that she has that I just wasn't even aware of, because as a man,
But we're not sure if I wrote it or you wrote it. So it's passages we've written.
yeah.
Well, some of the reviews, the reviews have been 5 stars all over Amazon, which is so nice. Things like, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. It was very visual. I pictured everything that happened because the writing puts you there. That alone, you can see it. If it's cinematic in the mind, it's going to be cinematic on the screen. So I think that's hopefully what's coming next. Am I right about that?
Yeah, absolutely. That is the goal.
Yeah.
I need found a really good, smart producing partner who knows how to raise. We need about 10 million bucks, and we can make
Nothing.
nothing. We can make a really good movie, and the objective is to film it in Hawaii. And my goal is to put this in movie theaters because I think it's a really beautiful. I think we could tell a really big, fun story.
So would you play Warren, or who would play whom in this story?
You know, honestly, I'm jealously guarding the role of Warren. I think I would have a lot of fun with that, and I'm not too old yet. Although I foolishly wrote him a lot younger than me, but uh yeah, I think it would be fun to play Warren and then to see this family. And the idea is that these are standalone books, so you can read moments like this and you can be done with the series. Or we've introduced pretty much everybody that you're going to meet throughout the series, and it really has become this family saga. And I was just telling Anna before this interview, Meryl, that I'm sitting out at night. We have a little hot tub in my backyard, and I'll sit out and I'll think about things. And I'm like mapping out book 3, and I'm thinking about book 5, and I'm thinking about all these little things about, and I'm so excited to tell the story with Anna.
It consumed us. It's consumed us. I said we go through our lives outside of this, and then we just keep coming back to these books. And I wouldn't say the word surprised, but I'm pleasantly surprised at the reaction to the book.
I mean, the reviews are fantastic. I mean, everybody's saying it's very relatable. It's very romantic. And I think this is very unusual with having, Chris and you together writing about romance. It's true. I mean, you don't read very many romances written by or with men. So I think this is like the start of something brand new, to have both sides coming together to show what romance really is about, from the man's point of view, from the woman's point of view, because it's always different. But somehow you've come together to blend something and make it beautiful. That's what people are saying. I mean, I'm looking at my Amazon screen, and many people are saying 5 stars, such a good, relatable story, romantic. I can't wait for more of the series. These are the comments. I mean, I'm sure you've seen them. They think it's gorgeous. They think it's beautifully written. You've really done something here. I mean, congratulations. It's really something new. That's very, very exciting. It really is. So I can't believe it. Sometimes we get some questions from people, and we do have some questions. One person asked, Kristoffer, how does writing romance compare to acting?
Well, it does and it doesn't. My entire career, I have been, when I'm cast, I'm either in a love triangle, or if you've watched my Hallmark movies, I'm the male romantic lead, or like I usually have some sort of romantic investment in storytelling. And so it's not a far stretch from the stories that I'm used to telling. It's just a totally different method of delivering those stories. And I got to say, it's a lot more fun because we have absolute control. I mean, I'll throw in a chapter towards Anna, and she'll be like, "Yeah, I love it. Let's use it." And then we just keep going, and it's like, "Oh, okay." Like, and on set, I'll be like, "Can we?" And I have no say. It's just and on the mark.
So having a little bit of control is a fun thing.
Yeah.
And the two of you together. I have a question for you, Anna, from our guests out there. They're saying you're a best-selling author under the pen name Christine Brae. What prompted your decision to write moments like this under your own name?
It was a long time coming. I used Christine Brae for many, many reasons, but as I progressed in my career, as I became more comfortable with molding the two sides of my life, because nobody at work knew I wrote books for years. As I got more comfortable with putting those two sides of my life and bringing my whole self to the table, I thought, I'm going to write under my real name. Plus, I think these books are just books that, we can put our names to. Anybody could read. It's just different, and it's something that I'm just really proud to put my name to. Not that Christine Brae I was proud of Christine Brae, but it's a very different format.
So you're on a new trajectory. Go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say they're multicultural stories, and I think that it's the first time that Anna's able to like share her heritage, I think, in a way, and tell stories about the Filipino culture and
Yeah.
we're Hawaiian culture. I mean, it's fun that we're able to actually incorporate like parts of our lives and our identity. So I think that also is she's able to use her name.
We have another question asking about book 2. Is it also planned for Hawaii or is it planned for someplace else?
Chris can answer.
It is all, so the entire From Kona with Love series will take place on a different island in Hawaii. So the first one is Oahu. This next book, I think I can tell people, is going to take place on the island of Kauai.
The Garden Island.
Garden Island, exactly. And then book 3 will be on another island. Book 4 will be on another. 5 will be on, I don't know yet. We'll figure that one out. But
That sounds like a great concept. Go to the different islands. Now, do you guys get to go and kind of absorb each island and think about, sort of write while you're there, or are you going to do that all remote?
So I think we've been talking about bringing our families over. It just can't happen right now, but eventually I'd like to.
Okay, as the publicist, I want to come. Can I come?
Eventually, I'd like Chris and his family to actually go to the Philippines. I think they'll, just to see their culture, and for his sons to experience that, because it's pretty cool.
We'd love to. Yeah.
Fantastic. Chris, where did you grow up as we wrap up this interview? Did you grow up?
Nevada, the biggest little city in the world.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know anybody from there. Do people really are born there?
Oh.
Or is that just a place people go?
Place people go, and then they hang out for a bit, and they usually go home. But no, some of us. My mom was born and raised there, and then I was born and raised there.
Go back there much?
Generation. Yeah, my parents still live there. My brother still lives there. Both my brothers now. I have a third who's in Sacramento, but yeah, we go back once or twice a year. The skiing is world class. We've got Squaw Valley and Alpine Valley, and Mount Rose. And we've got Lake Tahoe. There's beauty. There's beauty in the hills.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I want to thank you both for being part of the BookTrib author series tonight. I'm Meryl Moss. We had Kristoffer Polaha and Anna Gomez. I'm so thrilled that you were able to make the time to meet with us tonight. Thank you so much. And we'll look forward to the next book. Look forward to the next interview.
Thank you, Meryl.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for having us. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.